We might even dip our toes into the Canucks and all kinds of stuff going on in and around town. But, of course, it is baseball primary. So, gentlemen, let us get right to it out of the gates. I've seen a lot of names on the list of the Toronto Blue Jays over the last couple of weeks as to who could be the potential manager of the, again, Canada's team. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But I did not see on anybody's list, unless I was just missing it, that they were going to go, in my estimation, off the grid and grab Charlie Montoyo. It kind of reminds me of what I felt when they hired John Gibbons. That to me was kind of like, it's another one of those head scratchers, because I sit there and I say to myself, you have a chance to stay within the organization, get John Schneider, get Eric Wedge. You have a chance to go out and get Canadian Folklore and Stubby Clapp. And yet they missed out on a couple of guys, but then they go get a guy that I didn't even think about.
I mean, I realize he does have a good resume, and he's going to be coming from that Joe Madden tree, as they say. But I'm disappointed. I really thought that they either stay in the organization or really you swing for a home run. And maybe you do get a player who's just recently retired who had manager written all over them. And we get someone's third base coach. I mean, hopefully he does well, but I think you've got a team that's really going to be not very good for a couple of years. And now is the time where you take that risk on a manager and shoot for the stars instead of saying, here's something that'll be steady.
You know what? I do like the hire. I mean, would I like to have seen John Schneider get a shot? Absolutely. We saw what he did here in Vancouver, what he did with the New Hampshire Fisher Cats, leading them to the Eastern League Championship this past season. But I like the move of Charlie Montoyo. He was kind of a name that just kind of filtered in the last couple of days when the search was getting down in the nitty gritty. But he's got a pretty impressive minor league resume. Fun fact: he actually played for couple of fun facts. Played for the Montreal Expos. Went 2 for 5, 3 RBI in his career. Also played AAA baseball in Canada with the Ottawa Lynx back then during their very first season in 1993. RAP Ottawa Lynx. But I think the most important and the most impressive thing was his ability to win championships in the minor leagues. He won I believe he won a AA title with the Montgomery Biscuits, and I believe he won 2 international titles at AAA. And the success he had with the Durham Bulls, I thought was pretty impressive. I think AAA is probably one of the hardest minor league assignments because players are always coming and going, but he managed to keep the Durham Bulls on track. And there was a feature that was tweeted out of him, something that the Tampa Bay Rays produced about Charlie Montoyo, and they had a lot of clips of players such as Evan Longoria just singing his praises, that Montoyo helped Evan Longoria develop into the major leaguer he became. So you know what, I like the move, and you know what? I'm kind of glad it's somebody who has managerial experience.
Well, let me just first of all say that I'm not a Blue Jays fan, and for me, Charlie Montoyo, this hiring again, you look at his background. He's got a strong minor league resume, as now alluded to, and it shows that he's had experience working with young guys, young players, and basically this is what the Blue Jays would need right now. Again, perhaps Montoyo is kind of one of those quote-unquote unknown guys, but perhaps again the Blue Jays see something in him and think that he's a good fit for this ball club. Now, Rob, you alluded to saying missing out on a couple of candidates for the position, but I think that's kind of a strong thing to say, but we'll see how this goes. Again, this is a rebuilding club, so it should be interesting to see how he fares in this position.
I look at it like this: if you're going to go off the grid and grab Charlie Montoyo, and it's probably a phrase I'm going to say for the next couple of minutes here, off the grid, because he was not early on, at least in the conversation, of the top 5 candidates. There was Sandy Alomar, there was John Schneider, there were all kinds, David Bell, a bunch of guys that were in the mix. And then, of course, at the last second, as you mentioned, Niall, he came into the conversation, and the next thing you know, he's named the manager. I look at it like this: if you've got a young team that's in the middle of a transition, at the early stages of a transition, and then all of a sudden you've got a first-year major league manager, your bench coach now becomes the biggest decision that you make, because you have the opportunity still to bring a guy that's got major league pedigree, that's got an opportunity to work with Charlie Montoyo and help him as much as he's helping the players. So even though the quote-unquote air quotes are for Charlie Montoyo as the manager, the bench coach is often overlooked as a guy that is kind of the glue and really the translator between the players, the front office, the manager. He's kind of that one guy. So now this opens up the question, who in your estimation, and I know this is kind of a cold call here, but who in your estimation is the type of bench coach that the Blue Jays need?
Well, assuming that some of the candidates we spoke about don't go to other organizations to get that shot, as the bench coach, within the organization, Wedge makes more sense as a bench coach than possibly John Schneider would. Those are the two guys I would think of, because those are the guys we've spoken about. Because, Wedge has that experience, which he can lend to a first-time manager. He's been there, and he does know the organization. He can be that steady hand, especially when it comes to some decision-making, because Montoyo's going to have to learn all these players real quick.
Maybe Bobby Meacham in Buffalo. Maybe that's somebody else who could very well slide into the bench coach role. But it's going to be interesting, I think, as a whole for the coaching staff, even though all the other coaches do have contracts into 2019. Obviously, Charlie Montoyo, it's always tradition. You want your own guys. So it's going to be interesting to see who does stick around and who goes.
Well, if we're looking at who would be the best fit for the Blue Jays, Wedge would have to be the guy as a bench coach, again, just because of his managerial experience. He could be there to guide Montoyo, so to speak, and having that big league experience and knowing a lot of those players, I think, helps in this case.
You look at a guy that was hired as manager of Puerto Rican descent, and everybody's talking about the fact that, he is a guy that is going to be able to communicate with the likes of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. You talk about Lourdes Gurriel. There is a good chunk of this rebuild, per se, that has got Latin roots. Now, that's fine and dandy. Do you say to yourself, okay, am I taking the best coach available, or am I taking the theme? The theme being, we're going to go a little bit into the Latin world, to dip our toes in there, because the key prospects, with all due respect to Kevin Biggio and Casey Clemens and, Danny Jansen, the big guy that everybody wants to make sure gets done and done properly is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So if you're looking for a bench coach, there's a couple of names out there that I think are still looking for a bigger role than bench coach, like a Sandy Alomar Jr., what have you. But Eric Wedge is a 55-year-old guy that's been around. John Schneider is a 40-year-old guy that hasn't been around. Are they still going to look for another guy that maybe is of this mold? Because you look around at a guy like Roberto Alomar, you look at a guy like Sandy Alomar, you look at somebody that is, of course, of Puerto Rican descent or Dominican descent. Are you looking at it from that perspective, or are you just simply looking for the guy that can really not only take care of the players but work with their first-year manager?
That's an interesting one. The whole thing in terms of the communication with the Latin players, you've already got that covered now with Montoyo. I'm thinking now you might want to look, let's break this down between your offensive players and your pitchers and try and fill in the gaps there and say, okay, we want someone who can handle the pitchers, or we want someone that can deal with the infielders. Maybe identify truly what your weakness is going to be. The one thing about the players they have coming up, we know that they can rake. We don't know if they can catch, but we know that they can rake. So maybe someone like an Alomar, who has a defensive background, might be the kind of person that fits in. Because Alomar, like all young players, when he was young, he was dropping balls all over the place, and he turned into one of the best defensive players of all time.
The reason that I bring up Roberto Alomar is because there's a lot of people that might say, why would a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest second basemen to ever play Major League Baseball, want to be the bench coach for the Toronto Blue Jays? Alomar could not have stepped in and been a manager. It's just too much of a shift, both from, conventional psyche, and I just don't think it would have made sense. You're setting them up for failure because you got a team going into rebuild. But now that you've got your brains of the operation, so to speak, in Charlie Montoyo, this might actually be a pretty cool spot to bring a guy like Roberto Alomar in. A, immediate fan connection. B, he knows everybody in the system. And 3, more than anything, in addition to the respect that he gets as being the guy in Cooperstown, he is an infielder. And if you look at the crux of what this rebuild is for the Toronto Blue Jays, it's Guerrero at third, it's Bo at short, it is Biggio at second. Again, interchange pieces up the middle. In addition to Lourdes Gurriel and a few others. I mean, this to me is where if you're going to make hay, you're going to build an infielder for the future. So, and you got Rowdy Tellez over first, yada, yada, yada. It seems like a stretch, but now that you know who the manager is and you can start to bring this into focus, Roberto Alomar Jr. is not out of the question.
I think another name that would be, I think, a good fit would be John Mcdonald. You look at his defensive chops. I mean, he played a very incredible shortstop. I'd almost suggest maybe a Tony Fernandez, but I think Tony, it doesn't seem like that's something. But but I think John McDonald would too, though.
Well, John McDonald is a guy that was kind of a journeyman player, with all due respect.
But the fans loved him. Loved him.
I don't know. That's a tough one. You got to remember, Roberto Alomar is Puerto Rican.
I agree. I think that's another name, John McDonald. I think he'd be a terrific fit too.
Okay, so we've got McDonald, we've got Alomar. Am I missing anybody? Are you missing anybody?
Well, I mean, this hire came out of left field, so who knows? We can just start going through everyone else's systems and seeing who's available. But back to Alomar here. The one thing I could see being a possible issue is you've got Charlie Montoyo, who's first-time manager coming from another organization, and his bench coach is going to be the greatest player that ever played for that organization. That could be pretty intimidating. I know he's not literally Mr. Blue Jay, but he's pretty close. And he's going to be your number 2 guy. I could see that being an issue for Montoyo.
Maybe Carlos Delgado, if you're thinking of another name.
Now you're really starting to think outside of the box.
Well, if we're trying to, I guess allow Montoyo to do the job and not feel like he's being undermined, then the Alomar thing would not make sense. But if the Blue Jays organization is grooming Alomar to be the next field manager within a few years, then having Alomar as a bench coach or be a part of the coaching staff does make a lot of sense. It allows him to be, coaching or teaching young players. It allows him to have the chance to build a rapport with the players. And, he's got that instinct as a Hall of Fame second baseman. He knows the game as much as anybody else, within that organization. So if they're trying to groom him to be a future manager of the Blue Jays down the road, that would be a logical choice as one of the bench coaches or, being part of the coaching staff.
That is KP Ween, Niall O'Donohoe, Lou Filippo. I'm Rob Fay. A couple of minutes before we take our first segment. So we have gone at length about the Toronto Blue Jays and the hiring of Charlie Montoyo, who's going to be his bench coach. From a player's perspective, all right, the Marcus Stromans of the world, the Aaron Sanchez's of the world, those who have been here. We keep talking about what's on the other side of the mountain. Let's talk about what's front and center right now. If you're Marcus Stroman and Aaron Sanchez, 2 guys that, again, are coveted by other teams, but at the same time are under control by the Blue Jays, what are they thinking right now?
Well, that's a good question. There's certainly question marks about their future. I know it's been a couple of, it's been tough sledding for those 2 guys, especially for Aaron Sanchez, really last couple of years. So, the question is, are they going to be a part of the future with this team moving forward? So it's going to be interesting to see how those guys, kind of fit in with Charlie Montoyo and company.
The reason that I bring it up is right now you've got Montoyo, who is not a pitcher by trade. So your bench coach, you need somebody that's willing to talk to the other side of the egg. For example, right now you've got the Latin guy that can work with the position players and the hitters. You've got Marcus Stroman, Aaron Sanchez, and a handful of other guys that are coming up over the next year or are already here, and you don't have really a guy that can deal with the pitching side of things. So it really opens up because a lot of the people that the Blue Jays have talked to, as far as the quote manager goes, have been of that side, the hitting side, the defensive side. They're going to need somebody who can come in and do a good job of the pitching. With all due respect to Pete Walker.
Well, yeah, that's a big question.
And again, I don't know if he's coming or going. Maybe this forces their hand to keep him, because all of the Blue Jay coaching staff was told that they were more than welcome to go in, work on, other jobs if they're there. The Blue Jays' knock is the fact that they can't keep their pitchers healthy. Pete Walker is the pitching coach. You've also got two guys that are starting to inch towards free agency, or at least the opportunity to start exploring other measures. And I really think that there has to be some part of this equation in their last decision, which is truly the only big decision, the bench coach, that has some pedigree on the mound. Am I wrong in that assessment?
Well, not necessarily pedigree on the mound, but someone who understands pitchers, like maybe a former catcher. And they certainly have a former catcher in the system with some minor league managerial experience. Again, I know we keep coming back to him, but he also knows them as well because he managed them in the minors. That could be John Schneider. He wouldn't be the pitching coach, but he was a catcher.
Yeah.
He knows something about pitchers. Plus, he had both these guys coming up at one point.
Stroman and Sanchez.
Both of them. He knows something about them.
And Sean Reed Foley. Yeah. And insert name here for the most part.
And he's young enough to relate to the kind of stuff that they are dealing with on a day-to-day basis as well. So, as opposed to getting the old sage to deal with the pitchers, here's someone that they're familiar with. I'm going to assume they trust him because they're familiar with him, and they've had success with him in the minor leagues. And he's a former catcher. Sounds pretty good to me.
I agree with the fact that you don't necessarily need a guy who has been a pitcher to help these young guys, or they're not young anymore, but a catcher does make some sense because, again, the catcher, kind of handles the pitching staff and the team, as you guys know. But having a guy that has the experience, whether it's a John Schneider who had worked with these guys before, or another kind of other catchers from maybe other organizations who have these coaches who are willing to leave and go to Toronto. I mean, that's definitely one of those types of former catchers, or would be something that they should be looking for if the Blue Jays are serious about having these pitchers resurrect their careers.
All right, we're going to take our first break here. We're going to go from the Toronto Blue Jays and their manager search and their manager solution to the World Series. Game 3 of the World Series is underway. It is the Dodgers and the Red Sox. Dodgers need this one. Boston took the first 2 games of the series. All of a sudden, people are coming out of the woodwork saying Red Sox at 4, Red Sox at 5. But again, Dodgerville, whatever they call it over there, is a tough place to play. And right now, the Dodgers are up by the slenderest of margins, at least last time I checked. We will take a break. We will let you know what's going on from Chavez Ravine on the other side. 2018 World Series next, right here on TSN 1040. Bottom line is it's an opportunity here for the Dodgers to get back into this series. Their bullpen is lock loaded and ready to go, but it is a 1-run game. Dodgers absolutely unequivocally have to win this game. If you are a Dodger fan or a Dodger follower or a scribe that is writing about the Dodgers, if they don't win the World Series this year after going there twice, are we at the beginning of the end? Or do we just march forward into 2019?
No, I don't think they're remotely close to the beginning of the end.
I think the window's still open.
Well, I think that's the end.
I think they've got a bigger window than Boston does.
Do you think it's easy to get the World Series 3 years in a row?
Well, no, but Boston's going to have to go through Houston, which is an infinitely more talented, younger team for the next 5 years. And they're going to have to go through the Yankees, which is also a younger team. What young teams are up and coming in the National League?
Well, you're assuming that it's easy to win all these playoff rounds and get to the World Series like in back to back years. It's I think if the Dodgers lose this series, which they will, I think it's over. You're not going to get to the World Series 3 years in a row.
Wait a minute. With all due respect, you're the guy that called the Brewers in the last round, right?
Well, they beat up on Ryu in Game 6, did they not? They forced it to the 7th game, and anything could happen.
Okay, I'll repeat this. You're the guy that picked the Brewers. Remember after Game 5, you're like, they're going to go home. It's going to be Miller Magic, and away you went.
Well, it almost worked.
Almost. They did go, and I did text you, Rob, that the Red Sox are going to sweep this series against the Dodgers.
You did, yes, KP, you did text
I think
me.
multiple times.
It is multiple times, absolutely. You should see. You know what? We should cut it off at 10 o'clock at night for the record, for future texts.
Okay.
All right, so I look at it like this. The reason I brought it up right now is you've got a couple of key guys that right now are right for the picking. I mean, I look at Matt Kemp, and he's not getting any younger. I look at Yasiel Puig, and even though he's a man-child, that he's a beast. Also, Clayton Kershaw is not getting any younger. This is a team that, even though we're used to them being right in their prime and being right in their wheelhouse, all of a sudden, when you start to look at them, are starting to show a little bit of their age, a little bit of the rust. I mean, with all due respect to Clayton Kershaw, who could be like this for the next, at least year or two, I think that this is their window, and it closes if they lose this series.
Oh, I don't know, but I mean, let's not forget they're missing Seager for
Corey Seager,
right, and that's one heck of a ball player there. I mean, remember beginning of the year, Dodgers had injuries everywhere. And they were wallowing well below
10 games below 500 at one point.
And it was kind of like we're talking about is Roberts going to lose his job? It's like, look at the team. There's nobody left because everybody was hurt. They're in the World Series. This team has some talent. You know that Bryce Harper's going somewhere for a lot of the money, and it ain't going to be Washington, which means the Nationals window is gone. I just don't see a team in the National League, with the possible exception of the Cubs, which once again you've got multiple good young players, that's going to challenge these guys.
The reason I bring this up, bear with me, I'm gonna use my Felix Hernandez card here. I look at a guy, for example, like Clayton Kershaw, who from the age of 22 was a 200-plus inning per year guy. Forget the strikeouts, which is asinine. He had 301 strikeouts in 2015, but I mean, that was a guy that in 5 of 6 seasons rattled off 200-plus seasons as far as innings go. In his last 3 years, he's down to 149, 175, 161, and now he's into his 30s. I just think you look at Clayton Kershaw for what he is, one of the best pitchers of our generation, but he is going to hit that wall at some point. Now, I'm not basing that just on the fact that he had a tough outing in Game 1 of the World Series. He is a 7-time All-Star consecutively. He finished second in the Cy Young balloting last year, and I think he'll be in the conversation this year. But at the same time, I don't want to equivocate high-end starting pitchers to running backs in the NFL, but there is a wall that they eventually hit and a shelf life. And I sit here and I say to myself, how long can we rest on the laurels of Clayton Kershaw's being that guy before we start to say, okay, the Dodgers aren't going to have the luck of the Irish and find their way from the bottom to the top? And I don't know. I just wonder if this isn't where you start to repiece and look at a guy like Yasiel Puig or one of their... I mean, if you're going to pay Machado, you're going to have to do something. But I don't even think the Dodgers will pay for Machado. I think there's 2 or 3 key pieces that are gone at the end of the year if they don't win the World Series.
Well, I think there's still a lot of depth with the Dodgers. They got a really good farm system. That's really what's helped them. I mean, they combine. They're like the Yankees, really. They combine a great farm system with great major league talent. And I mean, look at who's pitching tonight for the Dodgers. Walker Buehler. Obviously he's, really whatever he does the rest of his career, he may not pitch as big a games as he has in this season. He pitched in the tiebreaker for the division, pitched Game 7 of the NLCS, and you know what? Nothing's fazed him. He's been outstanding here tonight, almost 7 innings in and holding a very powerful Boston offense in check.
Well, in regards to Kershaw, I do see Kershaw on the decline. It happens to every athlete, unless you're Tom Brady, I guess. But when he was on the disabled list, or when he wasn't pitching, the Dodgers actually had other guys that filled in. Ryu was outstanding this year. Buehler, as now alluded to, Rich Hill. I don't know his contract status, but Rich Hill gave the Dodgers quality innings all season long. They do have depth in that pitching rotation. Of course, Kershaw is Kershaw, the guy who's going to dominate when he's on. But I would say even if Kershaw was, let's say, like Felix Hernandez this year, other guys in that rotation would be able to step in and get the job done, at least during the regular season. Because you got to remember, in the National League West, they are facing teams like the San Diego Padres or the Giants when they're not doing well. So regular season play is a little bit different. But getting to the World Series 3 years in a row, I don't see that happening, but we'll see.
I just look at this thing in its entirety, right? And Buehler is what's going to replace Kershaw, as they say, as the ace. And let's be frank, I realize Kershaw is obviously gone over that curve, okay? Clayton Kershaw would be the ace of 25 teams in Major League Baseball right now in the condition that he's in. If he becomes a number 2, are you kidding? And let's not forget, he is coming off of an injury. And yes, he may get hurt again because he is getting older and he's got a lot of miles on the arm. All these other teams that are contenders, their pitchers have a lot of miles too. A lot more miles than Clayton Kershaw has, say, in the last 3 years. I expect the Dodgers to be in it all, for a few more years. There's a lot of talent there, and if they move that talent, they are going to get talent back for it. They made their big dump last year when they sent everyone over to Atlanta to clear up space, and that space is to sign either Machado or Bryce Harper.
I don't think that they're going to sign either of those guys. I really don't. You look at the Dodgers right now, and you look at somebody like Manny Machado, who everybody in, Dodgerville is falling in love with right now for all the right reasons. I mean, he's a guy that can perform, but I don't know at that price tag if even the Dodgers are going to go in on him. I have a feeling Manny Machado is going to go for less than what a lot of people are thinking. And don't get me wrong, he's the proverbial, cornerstone third baseman. But not to get too far off topic here, I don't know if Machado is the guy that I'm circling my name. Clayton Kershaw, for me, is the meal ticket here. Reason I bring him up is I wanted to bring Felix Hernandez into the conversation. Hernandez was a 6-time All-Star in 7 years. He's got very similar numbers to Clayton Kershaw pre-30 years old. But once, all of a sudden, Felix Hernandez, on a much different team than the Dodgers, Mariners are going through a much different phase of their tenure. But 2017, all of a sudden, injury. And then you look at 2018, 8-14. Now, again, two different teams, but you look at innings, you look at velocity, you look at strikeouts. 30 seems to be that wall that a lot of pitchers will hit unless you're Roger Clemens. But of course, we can have a conversation about that another day, where you start to all of a sudden show your warts. Should the Dodgers be concerned? And he is a guy that, of course, can opt out and move on. If you're the Dodgers, are you pressing the panic button to bring him back, or do you let him ride?
I have a feeling Kershaw will be back. I think, he's been so established there. I'd be very surprised if he did leave, regardless whether he decides to opt out or not. I think that's a marriage that's going to last for a little bit longer. You look at, guys coming up the pipeline. You have Walker Buehler, as we mentioned. Julio Urias. I mean, he's a tremendous young left-hander. Great stuff. He's pitched out of the bullpen during these playoffs. You have Alex Wood. You have Kenta Maeda. And Kenley Jansen. He's as good as they come as far as closers go. Yeah, as far as Kershaw, you do have to wonder, how much tread is on the tire. But, at the end of the day, he's still a really good pitcher. And I think until proven otherwise, I think you have to go with Kershaw and just let it ride.
I never thought I would get to the point where I'm bringing up war in a conversation here. But if we were to go back to 2013, Clayton Kershaw's war was 8. It has gone from 8 to 7.5 to 5.8 to 4.9. Clayton Kershaw's WAR in 2018 was 3.3. Wins above replacement.
Missed half the year.
But it doesn't matter. It is just the simple fact that if you're looking for a guy like Clayton Kershaw to, quote, be the leader, he made $35.5 million again this year after he did last year. I don't know if I'm the Dodgers, if I'm all in on Clayton Kershaw, who's now into his 30s. His numbers are trending down, and I'm a team right now whose window looks like it's closing. He's a very interesting study because the reality is he's Clayton freaking Kershaw. He's on the pace to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But at the same time, if I'm a GM, that was puberty, by the way. If I'm a GM, all of a sudden I'm sitting here saying, well, what do I do here? What do I do with him? Because the reality is his contract's coming up. My window, I'm not sure if it's open or if it's closed. You guys say it's open. I say it's closing.
It's closing.
So I don't know how we split the difference here, but he, to me, is the epicenter of what the Dodgers do or don't do.
Well, I don't think Kershaw is going to opt out or leave, as Niall alluded to earlier. But if I were the GM of the Dodgers, I would not want to keep him because of the price tag, and also he's not a playoff performer. I know he did a great job in the NLCS for that one start, but look at Game 1 of the Sears World Series.
I'll give you guys final thought.
I guess we can throw Chris Sale out of the toilet too, because he wasn't very good in Game 1 of this or in the last series either. So I guess you let him walk too, right?
The Red Sox are at 2-0 right now.
Well, everyone's got to carry some cheese, right? So you can't base stuff on one game.
Oh no, that's for Kershaw's career. If you look at
trade Drew Brees, he threw 3 interceptions. Trade them.
Hey, bottom line, Game 5, final game at Dodger Stadium this year. Who throws out the first pitch, Vin Scully or Tommy Lasorda?
Yeah, it's got to be Vin Scully, I would think.
Tommy.
Walter Alston is...
You got to turn your mic on, buddy.
Sorry about
this stuff to say here.
Even Walter Alston is still held in higher regard than Tommy Lasorda. Vin Scully is Vin Scully.
Okay, we'll take a break here. We'll split the difference. KP's already doing his push-ups, getting ready for the next segment. When we come back, baseball's got a lot of questions on the forefront. One of them is the umpiring. We have been able to kind of take the foot off the gas pedal, albeit briefly. I know Lou's got some pretty spiky opinions on this. Baseball is going to have to address what we've seen this year from Joe West. We've seen a couple of umpires that really weren't up to snuff in key moments. Does baseball feel that same way? You're listening to Vancouver Canadians Game Day on TSN 1040. Kenley Jansen's just coming to the baseball game wearing the old red and blue and white, number 74. 1-0 Dodgers, top of the 8th. This is 4 outs away from the Dodgers, bringing this to within 1 game of the World Series. Now, somebody asked me during the week, who's the worst umpire in Major League Baseball? And I actually had to think about it. Usually it's just Joe West and you don't really worry about it. But
Angel Hernandez.
He's not the worst. He's just really, really bad. And
he blows the big calls. But that's the problem.
Well, he has a history with a certain team. He does. He has a history with a certain team, and it just got accentuated.
Well, let him know, for all those who aren't diehard baseball fans, who's that team?
That's Boston. He's got a problem when he calls games with Boston. And it's very, very well known that he has a problem, making a lot of calls that, let's just say, other umpires wouldn't make.
So I've never been one to hack on an umpire. I understand how hard it is. Yep. I understand how many decisions they have to make over the course of a game. But even the supporter of umpires and officiating in sports, have to sit back and say, boy, baseball's going to have to address at least a couple of things. And by the way, Kenley Jansen came in and just gave up a home run that tied up the game. So Boston
Jackie Bradley
has just evened it up. A solo job in Los Angeles. Your big arm comes in, and hello, welcome to the game.
That's quite the punch in the face if you're the Dodgers right now.
Well, it is,
because that's a guy you're expecting to lock it down and get them back in this thing. Wow.
The previous pitch to that was almost over his head, and he swung through it.
I know, Jackie, good sense of the strike zone. Yeah. But speaking of strike zones, you look at the umpires. If baseball had to make a change, and again, it's an abbreviated segment, so if it carries on, we'll do it into the 8 o'clock hour. But what is the one change that Major League Baseball has to make? I'm going to put my thought out there first. Major League Baseball umpires are scrutinized periodically. For example, they will get tested over the course of the season. For example, the Vancouver Canadians play in the Northwest League. The Northwest League umpires get 3 visits over the course of the season. The umpires don't know when the visits will take place. They don't know if it's going to be in Vancouver, Eugene, Boise, Salem, wherever. But they do get visits. Major League Baseball obviously is under a lot more scrutiny because A, it's televised, B, everybody in the world sees what's going on, and the graphics alone show you when you've made a mistake. Does baseball need to go more technical, or do they need to maybe reinsert a little confidence? Because I heard an argument the other day that umpires' confidence is wavering. And sometimes when you're confident about something, you can come on and do a good job. For example, I'm confident on the radio. Am I good? Who cares? It's just a matter of it's something that I feel comfortable in. Now, if all of a sudden my boss was sitting right beside me, waiting for me to make a mistake, I'd start fumbling, I'd start bumbling, I'd probably make more mistakes because my boss hasn't enabled me to go out there and just do my job. Does baseball need to take more off of the plates of the umpires at Major League level, or do they simply need to assist them more?
I think they need to assist them more by being a little bit more stringent with their evaluation. The technology is there now to literally grade them throughout the game. Are they going to make mistakes? Of course they are. But if you've got a pitcher, not a pitcher, if you've got an umpire who consistently calls poor balls and strikes, that guy should be nowhere near the postseason, period. I know the NFL does it that way, where they score the umpires and the referees. The NHL does it round by round. The guys who referee in the final were the best officials during the playoffs. Major League Baseball has the ability to do it. They just don't.
Well, you got an umpires union, you got a players union. There's a lot of, chefs in the kitchen on this one. What I'm trying to say here is the fact that right now you've got $1 billion industry, $1 billion. And I don't think there's anybody in baseball right now that is feeling it more than the Houston Astros. Houston Astros are in a series where there was a call that could have changed the entire complexion of their postseason. They're out. They're at home. There's no gates. There's no extra revenue coming in. There's no merchandise going out the door. They're over on a call. Now, again, it's one call, and it didn't mean that they were going to win or lose that series, but at least could get them back into the conversation. It's on Major League Baseball and the umpires to do better. So how do you look at the Houston Astros this offseason and say, you know what, we see the error in our way, and between now and opening day, this is what we're going to do?
Well, it's it's very interesting. We saw in the NFL a referee getting fired. I guess today or yesterday. And you also actually have the NFL. They'll apologize to teams that the referee screwed up the call. Major League Baseball, you don't really see that, really. And as Lou said before, I think the resources have to go into better umpiring, but it is a tough job. I mean. We see in the Northwest League, these umpires, they're just like the players. They're developing too. They're trying to, get better and make it to the next level. But I think the technology, maybe it's kind of gone a little bit overboard. Maybe I think now with the, with technology, maybe the umpires, they feel extra pressure. And, it's there for a backup and it's there to help them out. But I think at the same time, they know they're going to get scrutinized even more when they blow a call, like Angel Hernandez when he blew those 4 calls or three out of 4 calls at first base.
Well, see, the problem is, KP, is you have the technology now. You didn't have it in the old days. Technology is a blessing and a curse.
Well, Rob was going to say that technology is actually a curse for these umpires because now you have people on social media tweeting after every pitch, the umpires being scrutinized, like you said earlier. I think this does have something to do with confidence as well because you have millions of viewers scrutinizing your every call. Can you imagine having that, having people come into your office and, watch you make a mistake or watch everything that you do? I think it's going to affect them. And this is not an easy job. You're talking about, the long season. NFL is a different story. It's 16 games, but it's just a tough job. Technology certainly has not helped umpires at all.
All right, here's what I'm going to leave you with before we take our break here. What about recruiting ex-players? The reason I bring it up, and this came out on ESPN.com not too long ago, is let's say you got a former catcher who has a pretty innate understanding of the strike zone. We're talking about a guy that goes to school and the umpire that does officiating school and, is repetition. But there was a conversation here that came out, I just want to say a couple of weeks ago, from a reporter that is pretty revered, Jason Stark. He's a senior reporter for ESPN. And one of his 8 ways to improve umpiring at the major league level, in addition to more replay and treat umpires like players with regards to job security, et cetera, was to recruit ex-players. And it's an idea that's actually coming out of several front offices. Why not find the next wave of umpires among guys who are currently playing in the minor leagues? We'll take our break here. Hold that thought. On the other side, we'll finish up that question. We'll circle back to all the top stories of the day. You're listening to Vancouver Canadians Game Day on TSN 1040. Okay, I got one for the Red Sox.
Dodgers.
Gotta go Dodgers. I can't say Red Sox.
I'm gonna go Dodgers as well. So KP, you're on your own.
Well, it's gonna be a sweep.
You have no merit. You've never came on this show and said something that has come true. What's the last
enough.
thing, KP? What's the last
The
thing?
Mariners collapse of 2018.
Ooh, that's true.
James Paxton
Yes,
collapsing in the second half of the season. You know,
in
when
fairness,
you
you did have
do well in the
Paxton
first
collapsing in
half,
the second half
when
of
you
the
do
season
well in the first half of the
all
season,
season
don't
long.
forget that there's a second half still to play with 81 games after. Well, in the second half of the season. So there.
And it is 8:05 for the second time today.
Okay, so here's the deal. If you're driving around listening right now, we're going to give away some stuff. It's our last show of the 2018 season, and we wanted to say thank you for listening at all courses of the season. So we've got a couple of Vancouver Canadian prize packs that we're going to give away. You get a Vancouver Canadians hat. You get a Vancouver Canadians t-shirt. We will take callers 4 and callers 6 right now. So if you're driving around, be careful. Make sure you do it hands-free. But again, you can hit us up at 104040 if you want to text us. But we are going to take callers 4 and 6 right now. So again, 604-280-1040, 604-280-1040, toll free at 1-844-876-1040. All right, Lou Filippo, Niall O'Donohoe, KPW, I'm Rob Fay. Again, these prizes are actually pretty cool. Get you the right size. Got to remember, this is Christmas time almost. Dude, I was walking here up from Alberni, and the dude at the corner with the dog that plays the violin, he's actually really good. For those who have been downtown, Robson-ish, you know who I'm talking about. And he was playing Christmas carols. And I looked at my watch, and I'm like, October 26th? I mean, I guess we're there, are we not?
2 months, even still. I would like to see stuff like that wait until after November 11th, personally. So, but that's our.
Hold on, after November 11th, after Remembrance Day.
Yeah.
Oh, it's usually kind of basically after Halloween, the stores clear out.
I know.
It's
but
I
don't know. I just
it comes way too early now. But
I don't know. That's just me. That's just me.
KP, how old were you when you stopped going out for Halloween?
20 indicative.
I was going to say, getting back to Niall's question, though, or his answer, I was going to say, I would think after Halloween, the Christmas stuff can go on.
He's avoiding
stores.
it. He's avoiding it.
I had to think about that.
What is the age? So I have a 15-year-old son. I have a 14-year-old daughter. And my son is still intrigued to go out, whereas my daughter's got no time for it. What is the cutoff? When do you open up the door and say, come on, bro?
Let's see.
I think for me, it's a height thing.
Right.
Well, no, that's not really fair. You could just be a tall kid, right?
Okay, how about this? If you're a teenager.
Yeah, I think that's
You think 13 is the cutoff?
Yeah.
13's got to be the cutoff for me.
That's what grade 7, right?
Grade 7, grade 8.
Were you going out? You were just getting... see, the problem is I hate the teenagers that show up at my door, and they're like writing their exams in a couple of weeks, and they've got the big, what is it, a pillowcase full of candy?
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah.
It's for kids.
Yeah, but when we were teenagers, we weren't teenagers with attitude, though. It's different.
I don't want to get into that. Okay, how old do you have to be to not sit on Santa's lap?
Depends on who Santa is.
That's disgusting. Let's just move on, all right?
17 years old.
Thank you for getting this back on the rails. That was, I did a cold shiver right there. When Lou winks at me and says, depend on who Santa is, what does that even mean?
We're getting a call from HR tomorrow. My wife on Santa's lap, and it happened to be a friend of hers who was Santa in the mall, and she was 22 at the time, so.
Okay, so how about them Dodgers? Dodgers
need a shower now. That was disgusting. By the way, never do those eye things again when you're talking about that. All right, we were talking about ways that you could fix Major League Baseball umpiring.
The umpiring, yes.
Yes. Niles never looked more uncomfortable than the last 30 seconds of the show, which is okay. Par for the course. Let's talk about the fact that they are saying, why not go out and get former minor league baseball players, guys that have, gone through the system, probably, or at least should understand the strike zone and have the pedigree and understand what it's like to be on a baseball field.
You know what? It sounds like a good idea in theory. I think it would, but the thing is, geez, you'd wonder about, former players. They might have ties to, their former teams, and maybe give them the benefit of the doubt and some, safe out calls or strikes, balls, that sort of thing. Unless, I don't know, I think you'd have to.
But you can't do that now because you've got
I don't know.
all the electronics to assist.
Yeah, I don't know. I think why not introduce more women into the sport? I think, we saw a female umpire in the Northwest League this year, and I think maybe that'd be a way to go as well. Why not?
I sit here and I say to myself, whatever it takes to make the game better. And I look at tennis as kind of a global leader when it comes to officiating. Now, don't let Venus's recent brouhaha with the official
or
discourage you.
Serena, I think.
Pardon me, Serena
Williams.
I sit here and I say to myself, if you've got the technology, why not use it to your advantage? And I know what the purists are saying, and I know that there's margin for human error, but I also say to myself, this isn't baseball of the old days. It isn't 10 cents to get in and 3 cents for a hot dog. This is a $1 billion industry. Ask the Houston Astros if they would be okay with more technology or more opportunities to call replays. Because the reality is you're in the postseason. You have to. Now, they have dealt with clocks to try and speed up the game. They've done everything that they can to possibly speed up baseball. But what are you doing to make officiating more accurate?
Well, I think with umpires being former players, I don't see that working, because when you are done playing, you don't want that scrutiny, on you. Again, we're talking about how you make a wrong call and you have the Twitter war exploding. You have all kinds of backlash. And if you've retired from playing the game, I don't think you want to put yourself under the microscope like that. Maybe you want to do broadcasting, you want to get into coaching, but umpiring that's a different ball game, and just opens yourself up to a lot of scrutiny. I just don't see why a player who's retired after playing professionally would want to get into that.
Well, I don't think you can look at older players, though. I mean, umpires actually start off very, very young. They go to a couple. I think there's only 2 umpire schools, and they work their way through. There's a lot of minor league players, okay, particularly catchers, and anyone who's followed the Canadians, who quite frankly crap out after 1 or 2 levels. And these are people who would still have an intimate idea of the strike zone. They know the difference between a strike and a pitch that was framed well, because they did it. And that's where, if you recruit those 22, 23-year-old catchers who just ain't going to be able to hit enough to move their way up, that's a good career for them, because Major League umpires make a pretty good buck.
Okay, here's the other thing, and again, this is from an ESPN.com story from Jason Stark. He brings up the other point that I don't think a lot of people take into consideration, the travel schedule that umpires have to go through. Now, he brings up a couple of good points. He calls it, quote, the travel schedule from hell. Many of them have no home games. They never spend more than 3 or 4 days in one town. They always fly commercial, which means that if there's a cancellation, a delay, basically they're, up the creek. Now, there's a lot of people that are saying, what's the solution? But what if you were to regionalize umpires? Meaning you've got the Northwest guys, you've got the Southeast guys, you got the Northeast guys, and yada, 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 so that the travel is not as cumbersome on officials. And also they get an opportunity to learn parks, learn teams, and maybe in turn become a better caller strikes, or at least understand the nuances of certain teams so that they can get into a better rhythm.
That becomes tricky, because then if you familiarize yourself with a team, you're likely to, this pitcher, that was probably a strike, even though I may have missed it. And then when the Astros are up, you have no idea what they're doing. Oh, did I bring up Joe West again? It's a dangerous thing, because they do this in college football, where you have the referees that come from the conferences, and then once they get to a bowl game, it's like, well, they're from the same conference. Are they actually going to favor them, or are they this? You really
but take the best. Like, you're still graded. You still have the opportunity to do this. I look at it like this. If you've got a guy who has to be in Los Angeles on Thursday, and then in Boston on Sunday, and then he's got to be in Toronto on Wednesday the next week, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. And if these guys are flying commercial, you got to remember, players fly, first class all the way through. They drive up to the plane, they get on, they get off. I heard a story, true fact, that Major League Baseball players don't even have to carry their bags off of the plane, and that when they get to the hotel, their personals and their clothes are already hanging in their hotel room for them. Like, that's the level of cushiness that Major League Baseball players have. Meanwhile, you've got these guys that are responsible for the rights and wrongs of the game, flying commercial, lugging their garbage around with them, trying to get everything right, and then they have to be perfect. I mean, in baseball as a player, if you hit 300, and this is the old adage, if you're 3 out of 10, you're still a Hall of Famer, but if you're an umpire with far less of the cushiness that the baseball players get, and you make 1 or 2 bad plays, you're costing the organization millions, and you're hurting a player. I mean, you could make a case for that.
So it goes back to, again, getting a lot of scrutiny. Like, as a player, if you think, getting 3 hits out of 10 at bats, that's, you've done a good job. Think about missing 3 calls in one game, that's you're opening yourself up to a lot of scrutiny. I don't know a player would want that. I'm sure you make a lot of money as an umpire in the big leagues, but I think it's just cushier getting into like a front office job or a broadcasting job or something else.
Yeah, it's kind of rare. It just kind of reminds me last year, Cullen Large, who was with the Canadians last year, he grew up doing some umpiring as well, and I think it's something he might pursue after his playing career, which, hopefully he does well, maybe gets to the bigs one day. But yeah, it is pretty rare to have players make the transition, go to the other side, and call balls and strikes. And yeah, there's just a lot of scrutiny involved, as KP says.
Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from the job that the umpires do, because it is an unbelievably difficult job, especially if you're the guy behind the plate. If you're in the field and you have 3 close calls a game, you've had one crazy game. Calls in the field are not that difficult. Behind the plate, yes, you're looking at 300 pitches, and you know what? You're going to miss a dozen of them. Let's not kid ourselves, because the ball moves. Yeah. But the very first thing you are taught in umpire school when you are at first base is you watch the bag and you listen for the ball. Yeah. There is no excuse to miss a play at first base, and it happens.
Very quickly, just to circle back to that one last thought about minor league baseball players maybe not wanting to go to the major leagues for the scrutiny. I think if you ask a lot of major league baseball, if you ask a lot of minor league baseball players if they'd be willing to do whatever it took to get to the bright lights in the major leagues, I bet you 9 out of 10 said whatever. I would sell hot dogs. Because the reality is if you've been in the minor leagues and you've had a taste of, man, I am this close to the major leagues and I don't get there, but somebody tells me if I got to go back for a couple of years and take the school and do my time in the minors, but I have a chance to get to the major leagues, dude, I probably got a sore rotator cuff and my knees hurt like crap, but you know what? Whatever it takes to get to the major leagues, because trust me, once you're there, it is all worth it. Some of them get real close and never get a taste of the good life. So I don't know if I can 100% agree with the thought that maybe minor league baseball players wouldn't want to do it. I think there's players out there that would be more than willing to take that scrutiny to try and get to the bright lights of the major leagues. All right, we're going to take our break here. When we come back, we're going to switch it up. I told these 3 gentlemen who have been so good to me all year that I wanted them to drive the bus for the final hour of the show. I wanted them to bring up the topics. I wanted them to have the forefront. I wanted these guys to step up and just have it their way. These guys have been so good to me all year long, being here on Vancouver Canadians Game Day, our final show, our final season. I wanted these guys to step to the forefront. So KP's going to make his arguments for calamari and avocado next, right here on TSN 1040. Darique. There's like hundreds of ways to spell that name.
Derek Martin, who played for the Raptors, was Darick. So yeah, there's a lot.
There's
of
a lot.
And I thought there was a lot for Darren. Daron.
Isn't that Daron?
That's
Darren Williams.
How many ways can you spell KP?
No, but you know what's funny is like guys that add like the extra word, like for instance, Rob with 2 B's.
Oh, okay.
I can't handle that stuff, man. It is what it is. Apparently People magazine came out a couple of years ago with the ugliest name of the history, and it's Rob.
Really?
Yeah. R-O-B, Rob is the ugliest name in the English dictionary or for names or something like that. I don't know. Anyways, all right. That is Niall O'Donohoe, Lou Filippo, KP Wee. I am Rob Fay. This is Vancouver Canadians Game Day, powered as always by Booster Juice. We had a call that was on the line, wanted to talk about going to umpiring school, but we have lost him.
Oh, he went to umpire school.
Oh, he went to umpire school.
Yeah, back in the day, and he wanted to talk about it.
And then he chickened out. That's pretty par for the course. That's all right. So here's the deal. KP, Niall, and Lou I give complete autonomy for the final hour of the show, final half hour of the show to come up with what they want.
Okay.
Now, Niall, I know you were ready to go. By the way, just so you know, if you're listening, there's one of us that does a lot more homework than the rest. Lou shows up with a napkin. KP shows up with his computer, but it's got like viruses on it, so I'm not even sure he's going to be able to boot it up. But Niall is always ready.
Yeah.
So Niall, you're hitting lead off.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you could go with this, but I'm going to go, you know what? One of my favorite things about going to baseball games is kind of hearing music. You know, I love hearing music. So I think my question for you guys, I'm going to go around the table. Imagine if you're hitting or even if you're pitching, whatever. What walk-up song would you choose, and who would you want announcing your entry in the game?
Oh, it'd be Crazy Train for sure. And who would I want announcing it? Michael Buffer.
Wow,
That's
KP.
Interesting.
That's a good one. Got me there because I'm not.
I agree with Lou.
Because I guess I'm not really a fan of, walk-up music because, I just, players, they are very superstitious. If they go into a slump, they want to change the music or change the walk-up, like last minute. I don't know. I have to think about that one. But
Can we pick for you?
Yes. Okay.
Can I pick for him?
Yeah,
Is that
might as
okay?
well. Yeah, sure.
I think it should be Thong Song by Cisco with Bob Shepard announcing it.
I'll go with that.
Now batting. Dun, 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 dun. The shortstop. KP Wee. Ooh, that girl so scandal. Anyways.
I have such a hard time believing that the walk-up music. I mean, one of the best things about being up in that press box is the players' walk-up music, the stuff they pick. Occasionally when the DJ will go rogue, and play some Barry White for Dante Love and stuff like that. Walk-up music is awesome.
Yeah, I would go Let Your Backbone Slide, paying tribute to, of course, Maestro Fresh West of Toronto fame.
Okay.
And if I can have anybody introduce me, Jim Ross, the greatest announcer in World Wrestling Federation history. By God, it's Ralphie! The pitcher would be like, oh my God. Anyways, okay, so we got Crazy Train.
And Michael Buffer.
You gotta turn your mic on, Lou. Like, Lou's like Fred Flintstone, with the big rack of ribs on the side of the car and the car tips over.
I just can't sit still in the chair. Once it's got wheels on, I just keep running over my cord here. So
okay, all right. What's yours?
As for myself personally, being part Irish, I have to go with U2, Vertigo. I have to use the intro to that. And
Tom Maynek's like, that's already copyrighted. Anything U2 is like copyrighted by the sport market.
And if I could have anyone introduce me, I would go with Murray Eldon. The longtime PA announcer for the Toronto Blue Jays. I just love the way he always announced the names, and like Willie Upshaw, and
who was the Leafs guy for all those years?
Paul Morris.
Ooh, no,
Morris. Yeah, okay.
Or he was
scored by number 19. Don Taylor does he does such a good job of that one. Anyways, okay, that's cool. You know what? The only thing I'll say that I wouldn't come up to is like, what's that, Vivuzuela or whatever it's called, the thing that the South Africans had at the World Cup?
At the World Cup.
Vuvuzuela or whatever it is?
Yeah.
I don't know. Sounds like a rapper.
Well, you remember Gunnar Height used Shania Twain, Man, I Feel Like a Woman? Yep. And he went on this incredible,
very catchy.
He went on like this 9 for 15 streak when he was using it. So he just started hitting all of a sudden. But
actually, can I change my introducer? It's not Jim Ross. I want it to be Bubbles from Trailer Park Boys.
Who was the player that we kept playing Michael Jackson music? Thriller.
Oh, Wilfredo Sosa, who looked exactly like a young Michael Jackson.
Wow.
He just kept playing
like Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Thriller.
That's a curse, man. Like, if you look like a celebrity, like, that's a blessing and a curse. Like, I mean, my brother, Nick Fay of North Vancouver fame, looks exactly like Elias Pettersson. I kid you not. When I saw Pettersson for the first time, I'm like, dude, my brother's going to get so many phone numbers. But no, he works at Browns in North Vancouver, and not a word of a lie, like a spitting image of Elias Pettersson.
That's not good for Pettersson, because what's going to happen when they say, I thought you could play guitar?
Well, I said to my brother, I text him, I go, dude, you look exactly like the Canuck that's scoring on a nightly basis. I go, you should play that up for everything it's worth. He's like, dude, I know nothing about sports. Like, I would be exposed in the first 50 15 seconds. And I'm just saying, man, ride that thing till he bucks you. I mean, somebody's told me I look like John Candy. I'm like, let's go, man. Giddy up. I'm ready to rock.
John
Anyways,
Candy?
the late John Candy.
Well, I know who he is,
Uncle
but
Bob?
I don't see it.
Oh.
I don't think so.
Well, Andy, it was kind of like a joke. It was kind of like tongue-in-cheek. I mean, obviously, I look like Tom Selleck. Oh, sorry, Moj has already got that one. Anyways, we'll move onward and upward. That's a good question, man.
Yeah.
By the way, what did you write that question down on?
I just say, just some sticky note. I just kind of jotted down a few things in case, in case I needed stuff to talk about. But I thought that was one good question. I'm not really sure where else to go with this, to be quite honest.
And the car sputters to the gas station.
The walk-up is great. Some of the greatest moments.
Yeah.
If you were the
best baseball songs, that's where I want to go.
That's been in that, been on the roof in the last 20 years and talked about the greatest moments up there, and half of them are going to be walk-up songs. Just the way you would give the gears to a visiting player. If you were coming to town playing in Vancouver, and your name was Lopez, you were getting J-Lo all night long.
Yeah.
And there were just just all kinds of stuff. And it was half the fun of being up there. And the players know it too. The best is getting that look from those guys down there.
Or they look up at the press box.
Yeah.
So the Eugene Emeralds today won the national award for the best promotion. It's there's a name of the award, but anyways, they won it. First time that a franchise in the Northwest League has won the national award, because they think outside of the box on everything. I mean, their mascot's phenomenal, their promotions, their giveaways. It is pretty impressive what they do down there in Eugene, Oregon. So we're down there. I want to say it was the playoffs. It was the Canadians and the Eugene Emeralds.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, instead of playing the Canadian national anthem, they played Blame Canada. The South Park.
Wow.
And
Really?
and everybody in the stands were giggling and they thought it was funny, but I was just like, somebody's gonna get a punch in the face for this. Like, I've always thought the national anthems are off limits.
Yeah.
That, you know what, keep it within the parameters, at least get it right.
Yeah.
But they played Blame Canada in its entirety, and that was it.
That's like hanging the flag upside down during the '92 World Series. That's shots fired.
It's
territory.
worse, man. It's worse. It's not the worst thing I've seen in my 13 years with the Canadians. We go to Salem for the 4th of July, and they've got this big promotion. We're going to put up 256 flags around the ballpark. It's going to be a minor league record. Everybody come out to the ballpark. And a third of them were Confederate flags.
Oh, my God.
So all of a sudden, some of the players on our team, of course, ethnic, they're looking at this and they're just like, is this actually happening? So our manager at the time, Rick Mignante, catches wind that some of our players are not really comfortable taking to the field with like 85 Confederate flags. So he politely asks the Salem Kaiser Volcanoes organization, hey, this is the history thing. Can you maybe take those down? And they're like, sorry, it's kind of too late. And that answer was not good enough. And he got angrier and angrier, and it was off the chain. So at about 4:30, 5 o'clock now, there's a bunch of staff in Salem, Oregon, taking down the General Lee, the Confederate flag, in time for the game. But they were completely oblivious to its place in history and the fact that maybe some Afro-American players might not feel comfortable having those flags completely enveloping them out at Volcano Stadium.
Yeah, it's pretty tasteless.
Wow. Yeah.
Completely oblivious.
Yeah.
To their credit, they just didn't even think of it.
Yeah. Well,
nothing? Luce got nothing?
Nothing
KP got
going
nothing?
there.
KP, what do you got? Some scientific fact? You got nothing?
Nothing on that one.
Good. Okay. All right. Let's move onward and upward.
I was going to go with baseball songs. Do you have a favorite baseball song?
A favorite baseball song?
Yeah.
It's got to be Take Me Out to the Ball Game, no?
Well, okay, that's
John Fogerty, Center
That's what
Field?
I'm thinking, Center Field, right? Or Glory Days, right? Glory Days is a baseball song.
Well, the video. Well, yeah, I guess. Yeah, it was. It was. Yeah, you're right.
Was it?
Yeah.
I had a friend who's a baseball player back in high school.
Yes.
Throw that
Yeah, and the
ball by
video.
you,
And
make
remember
you
the
look like a
video?
fool. It's a baseball song.
Yeah, and they had Springsteen saying at the end of the video, so who got you in the
Even
ninth
Boise
inning
Summer.
or whatever,
Hey, does the last segment of Paradise by the Dashboard Light count?
Well,
Yes. KP, what's your favorite?
I'm going to say Batter Up Nelly.
That was about as authentic.
Batter up Nelly.
Because let's not forget. I think was it KP? Oh no, it was Niall who got the hip hop songs last week.
Yeah, so yes.
Dude, you totally caved in on that. Do you remember that? Remember his topic was like, name as many hip hop songs as you can.
Or artists.
That was the most Caucasian moment in the history of the show.
He names like 2.
And it was like obscure ones too. Like he forgot Eminem.
Like no Tupac, no Eminem.
Yeah. Who were the ones that you named?
I don't even
I think he
remember.
tried to slip in like Susan the Glue Cart, and we're like, no, that's not a rap.
Just frantically Googling.
Ayo. Okay, so
Actually, one of my favorites, I'm not really a huge country music fan. I don't mind country music in small doses. I can't handle it 24/7, but I think one of the best baseball songs, Alabama, Cheap Seats. About minor league baseball. I think I love that song. So,
sing it. Come on, right? No. Okay, how about this? We have a text. What would you take one baseball item into your coffin after you die? What goes into the ground with you? One piece of baseball memorabilia. What would you take? Doesn't even have to be something that you own. What would you take? Would you take ball? Would you take bat? Would you take a recording of a song? Would you take a PS4? What would you take? We're gonna live forever. Why would I even think of this question? I would get buried in a jersey.
Yeah, a jersey.
An Austin Matthews jersey.
Austin Matthews.
That's not a baseball item.
Okay, fine. What jersey would you get buried in?
My powder blue Blue Jays jersey.
See?
There you go.
KP?
I'm partial to powder blue.
I've got a Jeff George jersey at home that I wear from time to time.
You would get buried in a Jeff George jersey?
Yeah,
Jeff
but then
George,
but then somebody would pick it off on the way to the cemetery.
Wow. I would get
6 instead of 6 feet under.
I would get buried in an Edmonton Oilers Gretzky jersey, to be honest with you. That's the biggest part of my childhood. When I did good at school, my parents let me stay up late and watch the West Coast games, which was the Oilers and Gretzky and Messier. That to me would be the jersey I'd get buried in.
Wow.
I would really have a hard time picking which jersey to get buried.
You're Italian. You go into the ground with a shirt that's unbuttoned halfway and a leather jacket. You don't have a choice. And smoking.
Yes, with a lovely beer in my hand as well. If I was to take a baseball item with me, honestly, it'd probably be a ball as opposed to a jersey. Just touching a ball.
Yeah.
Right? Burns better too.
Okay. All right. Awkward segment. Good for the Radio Hall of Fame. Andy Cole, what do you got?
Oh, well, you just throwing this at me, eh? Just random question?
Oh, you've been itching. What jersey would you get buried?
Oh, the jersey. Oh, well, I don't own it yet, but probably a Pedersen 94 skate jersey.
Come on.
Wow. A Pedersen jersey.
Pedersen 94 skate jersey. I'm 14.
Oh my God! Like at least.
To be honest with you, I only own like 2 jerseys, and they don't have nameplates on the back.
Sold out?
Hold on. What are the 2 jerseys?
Well, I just own a Canucks skate and Team Canada, but they don't have nameplates on the back. I don't even like them that much, to be honest. I need a new jersey, and I've been eyeing a 94 skate jersey, best Canucks logo ever.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to go with the crowd right now and say Pedersen.
I prefer the jerseys with no names on the back as well. Good for you.
My all-time favorite player, Canucks player, is Bure. So, I mean, if I had to pick a traditional player, I would say 94 skate jersey, Bure. That would be the one.
If you have a 10, you know who it is. You don't need a nameplate on it.
It's true.
But no, then it's not an accurate jersey. You know what? I have to be honest, when I'm buying jerseys, I don't want the signature on it. Like sometimes, you think to yourself, oh, well, this would be worth more. I don't want that big black Sharpie coming up the one. Like if I saw Pavel Bure, I'd want to get an autograph, but I don't know if I'd want it on my jersey because it would wreck my jersey.
I don't know if it's true or not, but somebody told me once that actually devalues the jersey a little bit, the signature.
Well, people are like, oh, then, you actually got to meet the player. But to me, sign something different. Sign a puck.
And how do you know it's actually an authentic signature? I mean, unless you're right there seeing it happen. I mean, heck, it could be anybody.
It'll be Pavel Bure. No, I'm just saying. I don't know.
Got
to
that
me,
jersey in Cambodia.
Somebody's like, I'm sitting here and I'm saying to myself, I don't know if I would want the jersey signed by the player. Like, okay, let's say a player comes up to you and says, let's say you're wearing for example, an easy one, an Elias Pettersson jersey. You're walking around town and Elias Pettersson walks up to you and says, hey, nice shirt. And you're like, oh my God, it's Elias Pettersson. And he's like, hey man, I got a Sharpie. You want me to sign it for you? If you were to be like, no, I'm okay. Does that offend the player? Or are they just like, oh, okay, cool, whatever?
Sign the label.
Who would say no, though? Like, really? I mean,
I would say no.
Would you really?
If they came up to me and asked if they could sign The jersey.
Well, that would be
Of course
strange.
I would say no. Yeah.
Well, no, but like you're at an event, and all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, cool jersey, want me to sign it?" What if you're like, "No,
No.
I don't know."
I bet that doesn't happen often,
I've
though.
never been
Every
a big fan of getting signatures.
Like, to me, every sport has an object that you can get them to sign, and to me, the jersey is not one of them. In baseball,
Right.
it's obvious. It's the ball.
Absolutely.
In hockey, it'd be a puck, or if you're really lucky, a stick. A signed stick is cool. A signed jersey doesn't do it for me. Football, there's a football. I don't see the point of signing the actual jersey.
Yeah.
I mean, if you get your jersey signed, in effect, you literally cannot wear that thing anymore because once you spill something on it, bye-bye signature.
Yeah, I had a jersey of a Dodgers jersey, actually, of Tom Candiotti. He actually autographed it, and I don't want to wear it because it's got that autograph on there. I wish that it had been, plain.
You have a Tom Candy. Well, you wrote his book.
Yeah, he sent one.
Cheap plug for your book.
No, he sent one to me. But what was that?
Oh, go ahead. Tell us more.
The other story about the signatures, I once had a baseball with Alamar's signature on it, and someone offered it to me. I was like, what do I do with it? Because I don't collect signature items either. And so it's, for me, signatures, autographs, not a big thing for me. Even on a baseball, I guess. Like, I just don't collect these things.
Oh, I would totally get it on a baseball. I wouldn't even.
Yeah, a baseball card. Oh, absolutely. I don't collect cards to sell them, and we've been very fortunate being involved with the Canadians, where we've had some pretty cool stuff signed. And I mean, like, my favorite is I've got both World Series Sports Illustrateds,
Right.
both signed by Joe Carter now.
Nice.
And I had a VHS tape of one of the World Series, and I think I've got 16 players who have signed it now. Because every time they came through, remember, can you get them to sign this thing?
And that actually leads to my other question.
That's different.
Who would you like to see come to Nat Bailey Stadium for an autograph appearance? My
Like
number
a
one
superstar
choice,
series?
Yeah,
Okay.
my number one choice, if it were up to me, if somehow it could ever possibly work, Dave Winfield. I would love it.
I
if
love
he came
Dave
here.
Winfield as a player.
God
I was
bless
a fan
him for
of his when
1992.
he
But
was a
yeah,
Yankee.
who would you want to see?
Obviously, I would like Roger Clemens. When he was, when I was young, I loved the Red Sox. He was the best pitcher.
He kind of snuck through Vancouver when Casey was playing first base for the Canadians in 2017. So Roger Clemens did come through a few times. I might go back in the time machine. I'd love to see Reggie Jackson.
Oh,
Reggie Jackson would be dope to say that, cross paths with Mr. October.
Nolan Ryan would be
awesome.
That would be awesome.
Tom Seaver?
Nah, I guess. By the way, very quickly, we got to go to commercial here. My last story on signatures is a real random fact. I went to a Rod Stewart concert with my friend, and Rod, I guess, throughout the show, kicks out soccer balls in the crowd. So if you've got the good seats,
right.
You put your hands to catch the ball. So he's kicking out these balls, and he's signing them before he kicks them out. And so I'm like, oh, dude, that'd be awesome. So I look away for 2 seconds. I think I'm fumbling around for some Skittles at my feet. I look up, and I can feel the breeze of the ball going over my head. The guy right behind me catches the ball. And so everybody's like, oh, and I'm just like, what the hell happened? So some dude runs up the stairs and offers him $400 cash for the ball.
Wow.
And they made the exchange. So now the guy behind me's got $400. Some dude's running back down the stairs with his newly signed Rod Stewart ball. And I've got like green and yellow fingers from getting my damn Skittles, because that's what you do. So I could have had that. It was right there. I'll never get closer to an autograph from Rod Stewart. We will take our break here. When we come back, our final segment. Our final segment of Vancouver Canadians Game Day. It is powered by Booster Juice and Brother. It's right here on TSN 1040. Lou and I, back in 2008.
Lethan Slade was with us.
We did it on location from Booster Juice, where when we were talking, the blenders would just go off.
Yeah, that was quite uncomfortable.
I'd be like, so Lou, tell me, what do you think about this? But it was a part of it. And Booster Juice, I do have to say very quickly, has been with us since the beginning. Very rarely do you find a company that is willing to come back year after year. They've believed in this show. They've believed in all of the different formats that we've taken it from, be it on location or, of course, back here at the TSN 1040 studios. So on behalf of myself and the entire Vancouver Canadians organization, Booster Juice, thank you so much for your community support and giving us a forum here in Vancouver each week to talk about baseball. baseball. All right, as we get into the final segment here, gentlemen, I mean, I look back over 10 years. We've seen a lot of things. When we first started the show, it was a minor league affiliate of the Oakland A's. And now all of a sudden, we're well into the Toronto Blue Jays tenure, 4 championships, 5 playoff appearances. I wanted to go around a kind of a nostalgia question. Your favorite Nat Bailey memory from all your years being doing the show. If you're driving around listening, the reason that this show has 4 people is because when I was coming to do this season, having gone down to spring training and just seeing how operations work, no one person can do a show like this. It's not fair to you, the listener, so I wanted fresh perspectives, different perspectives, but I'm big on, rolling with the guys that have been here since the beginning and guys that have really put in the work. And I've known Lou's like family, man. He's been with me since 2008 in some way, shape, or form. KP Wee's been with me for years and years, and he does everything under the sun. And Nilo Donahoe gives some of the best coverage of the Vancouver Canadians that I think I've ever come across. He's been doing it for years. So I thought, you know what, man, instead of going out there and getting the fancy boy or getting somebody who's, got maybe a bigger name, I wanted my guys. I wanted the crew that when we came together, it'd be like sitting around at a bar, having a beer, just hanging out and having a good time. And they've got great perspective, and you guys have been fantastic to be around. So I wanted to finish with some of your great memories in Nat Bailey Stadium as we get ready to head into the offseason officially.
Well, Rob, that was very gracious of you, but I think we all understand that we actually fell into the salary cap, so.
Cap-friendly deal.
I think all of us fall under the salary cap. Yeah, they got room to spare.
We're good in the clubhouse. That's right. Analytical darlings.
I have 2 favorite moments from Nat Bailey. One is a personal one, and one was a team one. The team one was the first championship, because at that time I was directing the camera crews and getting them ready for the shot. And when you work upstairs, as you guys are familiar, you don't actually enjoy the game. You are working. It's when that game is over that you get to enjoy what was going on. And it was that locker room after the first championship. That was a great memory. The second big memory, I've got to thank Rob for this one. Growing up, didn't want to be a professional athlete. I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. And in the summer of 2008, because of an unfortunate thing that happened to a member of the Canadiens team, Rob, last minute, needed a broadcast partner. Gave me a headset, said, go down to the field. Radio comes on. It was a 1040 game. And I was a broadcaster in a major market. And that was the dream I had when I was a kid. That is my favorite Nat Bailey moment.
I remember the moment as well.
Man, I've got so many. I don't know if I can limit it down to one. I have to go. I'm going to go with 2013 Game 2 of the Northwest League Final against Boise Hawks. And, of course, the Seas were down 1-0. They had to win that game to stay alive, and they did. I remember Kyle Anderson getting in a huge jam. I think he threw like 10 consecutive balls, and I think he loaded the bases. But anyway, things were not looking good. Seas were just hanging on by their fingernails. And I remember Jim Sankowski coming out, and I think that was the pitching visit of all time in franchise history. Whatever he said to Kyle Anderson, it worked. He got out of the inning, and they went on to win the game. Of course, Tom Robson the next night, good old Ladner, BC lad, got the job done in Game 3. I look back to Joe Carter. I look back to Dave Steeb, Johnny Bench, guys who have been here for Superstar Series. It was a thrill to get to meet them. But I think for me, I'd have to say this past season, I think as far as Nat Bailey Stadium memory was getting behind the microphone for the first time as a public address announcer. And what I'll always remember is Griffin Conine's first home run, which cleared the center field wall. It was just really cool to actually kind of be part of that. And I hope he makes it to the big leagues, because then I can say, I was the PA announcer when he homered. And but you know what? That was the coolest thing. That was really a bucket list thing for me. And I just have so many memories, but I know we're running out of time here. So take it away, KT.
I actually have 2 moments as well. The first one would be the team winning the championship in 2017. Just being there at Nat Bailey Stadium, the vibe, the atmosphere, like every game at home was a 2-1 final. It looked like everything that Rich Miller did, all the moves he made, the manager at that time, all of them worked. It was great. That vibe and that homestand just in the playoffs. The second one is also something personal as well. Rob, you've been very good to me. You let me do some of the online games as far as play-by-play. And the one that sticks out was the one in 2012 when Derek Chung was a catcher. He hit a walk-off sacrifice fly to win a 1-0 game. It was my first time calling a walk-off moment, and it was just thrilling to be in the booth that afternoon.
My greatest memory has nothing to do with any of the games that I've called. When I first started doing Canadians baseball back in 2007, I had two kids that were, I want to say, 2 and 3 years old. My son lives with his mom. My daughter lives with me, and my daughter has been along for all of it. She has been there from the start. She has been there. I've changed her diaper in my broadcast booth. That is a verifiable fact. So this year, my greatest moment was she actually became an employee of the Vancouver Canadians. So my daughter got to work with her old father at Nat Bailey Stadium, and watching her as an usher at the stadium for me was something that I was just like, holy cow, man, we made it. Like, it's tough being a broadcaster. You're always away from home periodically during the season, and your kids and your wife, they take the brunt of it. So to see that my daughter still wanted to be a part of the beauty of Nat Bailey and now makes it a part of her life, for me, that was pretty spectacular. The friendships that I've made, the games that I've called, that's all cool. You guys are fantastic. I'm going to finish this by just saying thank you to TSN. I have been here for 13 years, and this is it. This is the final straw. We're obviously going to be making a change here in the coming days and weeks and months, but this has been home for me. And as everybody back in Nat Bailey Stadium gives high fives and gets ready for the next chapter, this has been extremely bittersweet for me, because I consider Trevor Martins and all of the hosts and all of the people behind the scenes, I consider them very, very close to me and very good friends. So as we turn off our microphones and go officially into the off season, all I want to say is to Lou, Niall, KP, thank you, man. You guys are brothers in this industry. Wherever I go, you guys are always welcome to come with me. But I can't not turn off this mic without one final time saying thank you to TSN 1040, even briefly to TSN 1040, for always making this show and the Vancouver Canadians a part of your broadcast. I can't tell you how much it has meant to us. Have yourself a great night.